Hello students. Today I am going to discuss one more important topic in carbohydrate metabolism, that is electron transport chain reaction. Okay, this is actually energy producing reaction. So where the ATP will be synthesized in electron transport chain reaction. So this will come under actually biological oxidation. Okay, in biological oxidation, we will study electron transport chain reaction, that is ETC, and oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, so in this topic we will discuss about what is biological oxidation, its overview. Next we will discuss what is oxidation reduction and redox pair actually. Next we will study about what site of the electron transport chain reaction and its complexes. It's very important topic, that site actually electron transport chain reaction takes place in the inner mitochondria. There in mitochondria there will be two membranes, outer mitochondrial membrane and inner mitochondrial membrane. This electron transport chain reaction takes place in the inner mitochondria. Okay, there are 5 complexes, okay, situated in the inner mitochondria. So in each complex the electrons will flow. Due to this electron will flow, the energy will be synthesized, energy will be developed. Okay, energy will be developed, based upon the energy developed in the each and every complexes. So based upon the energy, the hadrons, that is protons, the protons will be pushed into the intermitochondrial space actually. That we will discuss in the future slides. What is intermitochondrial space? It is not inner, it is inter. Inter means between. Okay, between actually, outer membrane will be there, and inner membrane will be there. Okay, in between this inner membrane and outer membrane there will be space. Okay, space, this is called intermembrane space. Into this intermembrane space, these complexes will push the protons. Okay, because of these protons, when the protons will be pushed, the outer region will become positive. Okay, and the inner region will become negative. Okay, due to this actually it will form the proton gradient. Due to the proton gradient, the ATP will be synthesized. That we will see in the future slides. So what we are going to discuss here, site of the electron transport chain reactions and the complexes involved. There are 5 complexes, and each and every complex the electrons will flow. We need to learn the sequence. So when we know the sequence of electron flow, it is very easy. It is very easy to write about the electron transport chain reactions. Okay, in electron transport chain reaction, actually the NADH and FADH2, which are developed or synthesized in the Krebs cycle, this will enter into the ETC. So what is the reason? Actually this NADH and FADH, NADH and FADH2, this will supply the protons. Because of this, actually this will supply the protons or hydrides. Okay, this will supply the protons. Because of what? The ATP will be synthesized. That we will see in the that actually we'll see in the electron transport chain reactions. So whatever the NADH and FADH is synthesized in the electron transport this Krebs cycle, that will help to push the protons, right? That will help to push the protons. This NADH coenzyme and FADH electron flow to the electron acceptor, that is oxygen. Okay, in the electron transport chain reactions, the electron will flow from complex one complex to another complex, ultimately it will reach to the oxygen atom, okay, to form water molecule. This is actually in the electron transport chain it will takes, okay. So complex 1 is actually called as NADH oxidative reductase, okay. From here it will push the electrons to the coenzyme A. From there it will go into the complex 3, like that. In the same way, FADH2 it is actually present in the complex 2. FADH2 present in the complex 2. So where the electrons will be flown, the electrons will flow from here to the complex 3. From complex 3 it will go to the complex 4. Finally it will reach to the oxygen, where it will form the water. You will see in the electron transport chain, so how the electrons will flow from one complex to other complex. Next, actually, during the flow of electrons, the hydrates or the protons will be pushed into the intermembrane space. How this will happen? When the electrons are flowing one complex to another complex, energy will be developed, okay. What is that? Energy will be developed in each complex. Depending upon the energy developed in the complex, okay, the number of protons will be pushed into the intermembrane space, right? Due to this, actually, proton gradient will form. This actually will study in the chemiosmotic hypothesis, or the mechanism of the ATP synthesis, right? We will see in the electron transport chain in the future slides, okay. Next we will study about the oxidative phosphorylation. What is the oxidative phosphorylation? And also we will study about the substrate level phosphorylation also. So then we will study about the inhibitors of electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation, and last we will study about uncouplers, right? Okay. And now we will study like a little bit about what is biological oxidation. in electron transportation, electron transport chain reaction, what will happen? So the electron will flow from negative redox potential to the positive reaction potential. Actually, when the electron is redox potential is negative, it will have higher number of electrons, so the electrons will flow from negative to positive. Understood? So that means when we know about redox potential, we will know from which pair the electrons will flow to which pair, okay. That we will say in the future slides, okay. Now we'll study about what is overview of the biological oxidation. What is biological oxidation? Actually, biological oxidation is nothing but breaking of the macromolecules into the simpler one that will be digested or absorbed into the digestive system. That will be easily absorbed in the digestive system. These simpler molecules will enter into the Krebs cycle or TCA cycle that leads to produce NADH and FADH. We already discussed actually what this NADH and FADH will do. This will supply the protons. To ETC. So with the help of this only the energy will be sensitized, that is ATP will be sensitized, okay. So sorry, so what is that? In biological oxidation, actually the complex macromolecules will convert into simpler molecules, then that can be absorbed in the digestive system. Then the simpler micromolecules will enter into the Krebs cycle or TCA cycle and get oxidized. We have already seen in the Krebs cycle there are many dehydrogenase enzymes are present, like succinate dehydrogenase, alpha keto dehydrogenase, where in each and every dehydrogenase that NAD plus will be converted to NADH, okay. We already seen in the Krebs cycle, okay. I have already attached one video about the Krebs cycle. So each and every wherever the dehydrogenase enzyme comes, there the NADH will be synthesized, okay. In one step, that is succinate is converting to the fumarate, okay. Succinate is converting to fumarate. There actually we need an enzyme that is succinate dehydrogenase. Here actually FAD is converting to the FADH2. Okay, this is the step where we will synthesize FADH2. Okay, this NADH and FADH is responsible for supplying of the protons. Okay, this is responsible for synthesizing of the ATP, right? So how one NADH will form 2.5 ATP, one FADH it will synthesize 1.5 ATP. Why the difference we will see in the future slides. It is very easy. Actually NADH actually involves 4 complexes and FADH involves only 3 complexes. So the number of protons generated by passing by NADH complex is 10 and FADH complex is only 6, right? That is the reason actually 4 protons will leads to 1 ATP, so total 10 protons will leads to 2.5 ATP. So FADH involves only 6 protons, so it synthesizes only 1.5 ATP. Right? We'll see in the future slides, we will understand clearly. Okay, next we'll study we will see the overview, like what is biological oxidation. So I already explained about the biological oxidation and the complex micromolecules. What are those complex micromolecules? Carbohydrates or proteins or lipids that will be broken in the digestive systems. It will be broken into monosaccharides, proteins will be broken into the amino acids, and the lipids will be broken into fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, this is the first step in the biological oxidation. The complex micromolecules will be converted or broken into the simpler sugars or simpler micromolecules that will be easily absorbed in the digestive system. In the second step, this simpler micromolecules will enter into the Krebs cycle. How this will enter? So this from the glycolysis pathway, it will enter into the Krebs cycle. Okay, Krebs cycle. In the Krebs cycle, it will synthesize NADH and FADH. In the third stage, actually this in the second stage, these simpler molecules will enter into the Krebs cycle and produces NADH and FADH. In the third stage, this NADH and FADH enters into the electron transport chain reaction and supplies the hydrates, and there is hydrogen, the protons, and synthesize the ATP. So how like what it synthesizes? So one NADH will synthesize one NADH synthesize 2.5 ATP, one FADH synthesize 1.5 ATP, right? This is actually overview of biological oxidation. Again I am repeating, what is biological oxidation? Biological oxidation is nothing but it involves biological oxidation is nothing but production of energy by oxidation of the substrate. That is simpler form. Simply we can call it as oxidation of the substrate and production of the energy. It is called biological oxidation. In the biological oxidation, it involves 3 stages. In first stage, actually the complex macromolecules will be broken down into simpler micromolecules that will be absorbed in the digestive system and enters into the Krebs cycle, where it will get oxidized and produces NADH and FADHs that will enter in the third stage, that will enter into the electron transport chain reactions, which produces ATP finally. Okay, now we will see what is oxidation and what is reduction. So we already know oxidation is nothing but loss of electrons, and reduction is nothing but gain of electrons, right? So for us it is 2 plus, that means it is losing 2 electrons. So if it is a 3 plus, it is losing how many electrons? It is losing 3 electrons, losing 2 electrons and losing 3 electrons. That means one species is losing 1 more electron. That means it is losing electron. That process is nothing but oxidation, right? Fe2 plus is converting to Fe3. That means it is losing 1 electron and form Fe3 plus. This process is called oxidation. If Fe3 plus is converting to Fe2 plus, so that is it is gaining 1 electron and form Fe2 plus. That is called reduction. Okay, gain of electrons is called reduction and loss of electrons is called oxidation. Gain of electrons is called reduction and loss of electrons is called oxidation, right? Okay, then what is a redox pair? If any substance or compound which exists in both oxidation state and reduction state, okay, substance or the substance or compound is called redox pair. Okay, if anything is situation, or if anything is existing in both oxidation state and reduction state, that process is called that pair is called redox pair. If anything is in both oxidation reduction state, that is called actually redox pair. Okay, I'm repeating again. If anything, a compound or a substance that exists both in oxidative state and reduction state, that is called actually redox pair, right? So we'll see a few examples of redox pair. So NAD and NADH. If NADH will gain the electron, that means in another way, loss of hydrogen and gain of hydrogen is also nothing but oxidation reduction. If something is gaining hydrogen, it is called reduction. If something is losing hydrogen, it is called oxidation. In the same way, if you see NAD and NADH, so one is oxidizing and one is reducing. So these both are in oxidative and reducing state. So we call this as a redox pair. So like that, FMN and FMNH2 and FAD and FADH2 also called as redox pair. This pairs actually present in both oxidative and reduction state. So those are called actually redox pair. Okay, so what is the redox potential or electron transfer potential? Okay, it is very important to know about the redox pair. Okay, how much potential it have. So based upon that, actually the electron flow will takes place in the electron transport chain reactions. If any redox pair is having a negative potential, if any redox pair having positive potential, so the electrons will flow from negative potential to positive potential. It is very important in the electron transport chain reactions. The electron flow from actually negative redox potential to the positive redox potential. What is redox potential or the electron transfer potential? It is a quantitative measure of tendency of a redox pair to lose or gain of an electron is called redox potential or electron transfer potential. Understood? It is a tendency or it is a capacity of a redox pair to lose or gain. Okay, so how many electrons it is gaining and how many electrons it is losing, so we can easily measure. So that's why it is called as quantitative measurement. Okay, it's a quantitative measurement of tendency or capacity of a redox pair. Okay, capability of a redox pair to lose or gain. Okay, to lose or gain of electrons. So that capacity or capability is called redox potential or electron transfer potential. How many electrons it can transfer. Understood? So so based upon the potential, if it has negative potential, the electrons if it has positive potential, the electrons will flow from negative potential to positive potential only. If you see the redox potential, right, if you like NAD and NADH have minus 0.32 potential, and FMN and FMNH2 will have minus 0.3, and FAD and FADH are minus 0.22, and the coenzyme will have positive, cytochrome will have 0.25, and cytochrome AA3 plus 0.025, water plus 0.08. So that means the electrons will flow from NADH to oxygen. Understood? So how this direct potential can of each and every pair will be calculated, and how we can give the potential, this much potential or fixed potential to the so and so pair. So depending upon the hydrogen potential, hydrogen um, ion potential, if anything is less than the hydrogen potential, will give negative, and if it is more than hydrogen potential, will give positive. So always remember, the electrons will flow from negative potential to the positive potential only, negative potential to positive potential. You always remember that electrons will flow from negative to positive. Okay, this is the thing. So we already seen this redox potential and the what is the capacity, so which will have negative and which will have positive. So the electrons will flow from NaDH to oxygen, that means water, that means oxygen molecules, right? This is the thing we are going to see in the complexes, right? So now we are coming to the actual topic, that is electron transport chain reaction. What is the site where it will happen? It will happen in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, inner mitochondrial membrane. So this is actually a model figure of the mitochondria. So it has two membranes. One is this is outer membrane. This is this one is outer membrane, and this one is the inner membrane, whatever it is, which is in the zigzag thing. This is actually inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, the space between the inner and outer membrane, this space actually, this space is called intermitochondrial space. Okay, intermembrane space, sorry, not intermitochondrial, it's an intermembrane space. Okay, the protons actually from inner membrane, it will pushed into the intermembrane space, to this space actually, into this space the protons will be fixed, pushed, right? in sorry in electron transport chain reaction, the electrons will flow in sequence. Okay, it is the electrons always flow in the sequence. How the electrons will flow? Actually, it will flow from negative potential to positive potential, that we already know, right? In each complexes, how the electrons will flow, if you remember that, it is easy to write in the electron transport chain complex how the electrons are flowing. We'll study about the complexes. It's very important to know about each and every complex. It's very important to know about each and every complex. There are 5 complexes. Okay, in the inner mitochondrial membrane, there are 5 complexes in this membrane, this zigzag version, the zigzag things. 5 complexes will stay. Okay, 5 complexes. If you study about each and every complex, it's very easy to know how the electrons are flowing in the electron transport chain reactions. Okay, so what is complex 1? Complex 1, it is actually NADH coenzyme or oxidoreductase complex. Actually, this is a NADH complex. In short, we will remember this. This is a complex 1. It is an NADH complex. NADH complex or NADH coenzyme complex. Why we call it as NADH and coenzyme complex? Because the electrons will be flown from NADH to coenzyme, right? In complexes, there will be some fixed electron transports, and there are mobile electron transporters. Okay, these complexes, complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, complex 4, complex 5, these 5 complexes are fixed electron transporters. These coenzymes are cytochromes. Coenzyme and cytochromes, those are mobile transporters. That means they are not fixed in the membrane. It will move from the intermembrane space and in inner mitochondria. It will move from inner mitochondria to the membrane, to the intermembrane space, like that. The electrons will be it will carry those will act as a mobile electron mobile transporters. Okay, they are not fixed, the position is not fixed, they used to travel and transport the electrons. Okay, we'll study right now about the complex one. Complex one, it is NADH coenzyme complex. NADH coenzyme complex. Why it is NADH coenzyme complex? Because the electrons will flow from NADH to coenzyme. Understood? So we'll study what it contains. It contains FMN. What is FMN? Flavomononucleotide. Okay, flavomononucleotide, it is a prosthetic group in the NADH coenzyme complex. Okay, it also contains iron sulfur proteins. Actually, we will written it as FES. Fe means iron, S means sulfur. Okay, it contains FMN prosthetic group and iron sulfur proteins. The electrons will flow from NADH to FMN, and it will turn to FMN H2, FMH2, and it will go to the electron transport chain. That is iron sulfur proteins. Then it will enter into coenzyme. Okay, coenzyme. Here we need to discuss a little bit more here. Little bit more about here. So we will discuss more about the coenzyme. Okay, this coenzyme, actually we will call it as ubiquinian or ubiquitian. Is it ubiquin? Okay, that is actually called as ubiquin. Okay, coenzyme, that is actually called as ubiquin. Okay, so when the electrons will flow from iron sulfur proteins, it will go to the coenzyme, that is ubiquin. So then it will enter into the semi-ubiquin. Then finally it will enter into the quinol. Okay, it will enter into the quinol. That is, quinol is nothing but QH2, right? So the complex one, it contains. So what is complex one? It is a NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase. Okay, it contains FMN, a prosthetic group, and iron sulfur proteins. Okay, the electrons will flow from NADH, hydrate will be transported to FMN. Okay, this FMN will be converted to FMH2. From here it will enter into the iron sulfur proteins. From iron sulfur proteins it will enter into coenzyme. Okay, coenzyme. Finally, from the coenzyme, this is actually ubiquin, it will go to the semi-ubiquin. Finally it will go to the phenol. It is actually phenol, it will be written as QH2. Okay, this is how the electrons flow in the complex 1, right? So now we'll see how the electrons will flow in the complex 2. Okay, what is complex 2? Right now we'll see what is complex 2. So there we have seen that complex 1 is NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase and there is a name for complex 2 also. Complex 2, actually it is succino. Since FADH2 we have seen in Krebs cycle, we have seen that succinate will form fumarate with the help of succinate dehydrolase enzyme. This succinate dehydrolase enzyme will form FAD to FADH2. This is the enzyme, it is forming FAD to FADH2 that we have seen in the Krebs cycle. So since it is forming which enzyme? Succinate dehydrogenase enzyme is forming FAD to FADH2. So that's why the complex is called as succinate dehydrogenase complex or succinate coenzyme reductase. Okay, succinate coenzyme reductase. Why it is a succinate dehydrogenase enzyme? Because it is forming FADH2, right? And why it uses succinate coenzyme? Because from the succinate only the electrons will flow. Okay, from to whom it will flow? From succinate it will go to the FAD, and it will convert to FADH2. There, from there it will go to the iron sulfur proteins. From the iron sulfur proteins it will go to the coenzyme, right? So the electrons are flowing between succinate and coenzyme. So that's why it is also called as succinate coenzyme reductase complex or succinate dehydrase complex, because it is forming FADH2, right? It contains in the same way, in same way like complex 1, it is containing what? It is containing NAD, FMN as a prosthetic group. So here it is containing FAD as a prosthetic group, and also it contains complex 1, it is containing iron sulfur proteins. It also contains complex 2 is also contains iron sulfur proteins. So how the electron will flow? So in the same way, succinate dehydrose enzyme, the hydrate will be pushed towards the FAD. So it will convert to the FADH2. So from FADH2 it will go to the iron sulfur proteins. From iron sulfur proteins it will go to the ubiquine that is coenzyme. So from coenzyme or ubiquine it will go to the semi-ubiquine. So from there it will go to phenol, that is PH2, right? This is how the electrons will flow. So the second complex is called succinate coenzyme reductase or succinate dehydrase complex. Complex 1 is called NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase complex. Okay, understood. Next, complex 3. It's very easy actually. How the electrons are flowing, based upon that only the complex is named. So the electrons are flowing from coenzyme to cytochrome C. Understood? So since the electrons are flowing from coenzyme to cytochrome C, you can call it as coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxidase reductase. Okay, coenzyme to cytochrome C. Cytochrome C, the electrons are flowing, so it is called as coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxidoreductase complex. First one, NADH oxidoreductase complex. NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase complex. Second complex is succinate dehydrase complex or succinate coenzyme reductase complex. So third complex is actually coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxidoreductase, because from coenzyme it will enter into cytochrome C. So it contains actually like complex 1, complex 2, complex 3 also contains something. What is that? It contains cytochrome B, cytochrome C1. Okay, and also it contains iron and iron which is present in both oxidation and reduction state. First, it contains cytochrome B and cytochrome C1, and also iron which is present in oxidative and the reductive state. So how the electrons flow? Electrons flow from coenzyme Q to cytochrome C. In between there are cytochrome B and cytochrome C1. So electrons flow from here also. So it's from coenzyme Q it will go to iron sulfur proteins, then it will go to cytochrome B, then it will enter into the cytochrome C1, then it will enter into the cytochrome C. Okay, it's very easy. So depending upon the complex, the electrons are flowing. So complex 3 is coenzyme Q cytochrome C oxidoreductase. So there is in between coenzyme Q and cytochrome C, there are few things like it will act as subunits. What are those? Cytochrome B and cytochrome C1, and that contains iron which is present in the oxidation and reduction state. So when the electrons flow from coenzyme Q, it will go to iron sulfur proteins. From the iron sulfur proteins it will enter into the cytochrome B1. So from cytochrome B1 it will go cytochrome B, and it enters into the cytochrome C1, then cytochrome C, right? In that way the electrons will flow in the complex 3. Next, finally, complex 4. Complex 4, it's very simple. It is actually cytochrome oxidase or cytochrome AA3. So the electrons will flow from cytochrome to cytochrome AA3 complex. That's it. Okay. So like in complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, cytochrome complex 4 also contains one name, that is cytochrome cytochrome oxidase complex or cytochrome AA3 complex. Cytochrome oxidase or cytochrome AA3 complex. From cytochrome it will enter actually cytochrome C. It will enter the electrons will flow from cytochrome C. From cytochrome C in the third complex it will enter into the cytochrome AA3. From the cytochrome AA3 it will go to the directly to the oxygen, which is having high positive potential. So from oxygen it will form water molecule. Okay, that's it. Okay, in the same way how the electrons are flowing in cytochromes 3 complex 3, complex 2, complex 1. So finally the electrons will move from complex 1 to complex 2 and complex 3, and it will go to the complex 4, where from the cytochrome C it will go to the cytochrome AA3 directly from AA3 it will go to the oxygen. Okay, this oxygen will form water molecule. Okay, this is how the electrons are flowing. So there is one more complex, that is complex 5, that actually will discuss that actually is not involved in the electron flow, it is only involved in the synthesis of ATP. Okay, when the protein gradient actually while it is supplying the electrons from one complex to other complex, some energy will be developed in each complex. In each and every complex, energy will develop due to the electron flow. When the electrons are flowing, energy will develop. Due to this energy, the protons will be pushed to, through the proton pumps. There will be proton pumps also. Okay, electrons will flow through one pump and the protons will flow by the another pump. So when the energy is developed, okay, in each other complex, this energy will be utilized to push the protons through proton pumps. That will actually located in the intermembrane space. Okay, due to the when the intermembrane space is filled with the protons, the positive charge will be generated. When the positive charge is generated outside the membrane, that is in the intermembrane space, in the inside the membrane, negative charge will be developed. So because of this, actually proton gradient will be formed. Okay, when this proton gradient will created, so automatically the protons will start pushing into the inner membrane. Okay, into the inside of the mitochondria or towards the inner membrane, but inner membrane is impermeable to the protons. So okay, when those are impermeable to the protons, the inner membrane is impermeable to the protons. So these protons will only go through the ATP synthesis complex, that is actually complex 5, which is also synthesized, which is also situated in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, so while entering through the ATP synthesis complex or complex 5, so due to the mechanism of this ATP synthesis complex, ATP will be synthesized. That we will see in the electron transport in the future slides. It's very easy and very interesting also. So in the same way, when the water is falling on the turbine will move. Okay, how the current is generated through the hydroelectricity pumps. When the water is falling from the very high from very high height, it means from very high altitude, when the water is falling on the turbines will rotate. Due to the rotation and due to the speed of the fan, the electricity will be generated. Okay, the electricity will be generated. In the same way, when the protons are falling on the ATP synthesis complex, due to the fall of the protons, ATP will be synthesized. Okay, that we will see in the future slides. Okay, next slide. So this is actually electron transport chain. In electron transport chain, there are 4 complexes. There will be 5 complex. Actually, 5 complex. Fifth complex will be used only for the synthesizing of the ATP. That we will study in the future slide. So when we look at the complex, So first complex actually that is called NADH, NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase. Okay, so electrons will flow from NADH to coenzyme Q. Okay, coenzyme Q. How it is, how the electrons are flowing, we'll see that. So one thing you have to observe, this complex 1, 2, 3, 4 are situated in the inner mitochondria. So this is actually inner mitochondria. This one actually inner mitochondria. This portion is called inner mitochondria. Complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, complex 4. These are fixed actually. These are fixed in the even complex 5 also fixed in the inner mitochondria. This is actually intermitochondrial space, the above actually. Outside this mitochondria, this this is actually inner mitochondrial membrane, and outside this portion is actually called intermitochondrial space. So above this one, so when we go like this, above that we will find outer mitochondrial membrane. Okay, when we come inside, this will be the inside of the mitochondria, right? So when the electrons are flowing into the intermitochondrial space here, so this way, when the protons are flowing, so here the plus charge will be developed. So when plus charge is developing here, so negative charge will develop inside the mitochondria. This is the negative charge. Okay, so when a proton gradient is developing, the protons has to push towards the membrane, into the membrane, towards the inside the membrane. So this intermembrane should allow these protons, but unfortunately this inner membrane is impermeable to the protons, so it cannot enter. So only way is fifth complex. Fifth complex will be there. So this fifth complex will allow these protons to enter. So this is the way how ATP will be synthesized. Okay, we will see in the future slides. First we will study about how the electrons will flow, okay, in the electron transport chain reactions. We have to study this first complex is NADH coenzyme. NADH will flow to the coenzyme. Electrons will flow from NADH to coenzyme oxidoreductase complex. Okay, so how this NADH will help? See here, NADH will be formed by number of substrates. So we already seen in the glycolysis and Krebs cycle, number of substrates are, number of enzymes are involved to form NADH. So few of that is glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, NADH will formed, and alpha keto dehydrogenase, NADH forms. Many are there. Even pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, this also forms NADH. When after forming the NADH, it will supply the electrons to prosthetic group in the complex one, that is FMN, flavomononucleotide. This will form flavomononuclear dihydrate. Okay, the electrons from the flavomonodinucleotide, it will go to the iron sulfur proteins. From the iron sulfur proteins, it will go to the coenzyme. One more important thing I need to discuss: these complexes 1, 2, 3, 4 are fixed in the intermembrane, okay, or inner membrane. But this coenzyme and cytochrome C, these are not fixed. These are actually, this coenzyme and cytochrome C, these are not fixed in the inner membrane. These are actually called as mobile transporters or mobile carrier of electrons. Okay, electrons, they will carry the electrons. Okay, and they will supply from complex 1 to complex 3 and complex 2 to complex 3 and complex 4, right? So when you observe, from NADH, it is the electrons are flowing to the FMN, and from FMN it is flowing to FMN H2, and it is then it is flowing to the iron sulfur proteins. From there it will enter into the coenzyme. From coenzyme it is supplying the electrons. See, coenzyme is called ubiquinone. Okay, that ubiquinone is converting to the semiquinone. Then some semiquinone is converting to quinol, QH2. This QH2 is supplying electrons to the iron sulfur protein. This iron sulfur protein, it is entered into the complex 3. Complex 3, it contains complex 3. What is complex 3? It is coenzyme cytochrome 3 complex. Cytochrome C complex. C, coenzyme and cytochrome C complex. From coenzyme, the electrons are going to the cytochrome C complex. So how the electrons are going? It's from the coenzyme Q, that is ubiquinone. It is finally supplying the electrons to the phenol, that is QH2. From there, it is supplying to the iron sulfur proteins. From there, it is supplying the subunits of the cytochrome 3, that is cytochrome B and cytochrome C1. So then finally it is supplying to the cytochrome C. So this is actually called as complex 3, coenzyme Q cytochrome C complex. Okay, from cytochrome C complex, so it is in the fourth complex is called cytochrome C and cytochrome AIA3 complex. Okay, so cytochrome C, it is entering, it is supplying electrons to the AIA3. This AIA3 supplies electrons to the ultimate acceptor of electrons, that is oxygen. Okay, this is oxygen. This oxygen will form water molecule. Okay, this is how the electrons are flowing from complex 1 to oxygen. Okay, so now we will talk about complex 2. See here, complex 1 is going through complex 3 and complex 4. Okay, so but complex 2, it is not touching complex 1, right? The electrons are directly going from coenzyme to complex 3 and from here to complex 4. So it is missing this. So when we talk about the protons, we will understand. So what is the disadvantage here? Okay, so what is complex 2? Complex 2, it is it depends upon the substrate. What is that? Succinate dehydrogenates, okay, reductase, or succinate coenzyme Q reductase, because succinate dehydrogenases will form FAD. Okay, this will supply the electrons to supply the electrons and forms FADH2. This will supply the electrons to the iron sulfur protein. From iron sulfur proteins to coenzyme. From coenzyme, again the same cycle will follow. Coenzyme to phenol, and from phenol to iron sulfur protein. From here it will enter into the complex 3, that is cytochrome B and cytochrome C1. So finally cytochrome C. From the cytochrome C, it will go to the cytochrome AIA3. Finally oxygen. So this is how the electrons are flowing. When the electrons are flowing, what will happen? So when the electrons are flowing, the energy will be developed. So in the complex 1, it developed 12 kilocalories of energy. In complex 2, it will develop very less energy. So complex 3, it developed 10 kilocalories energy. Here also complex 4, 10 kilocalories energy. Due to this 12 kilocalories energy, it will supply 4 protons, or it will pump 4 protons there. Okay, due to the energy, complex 1 will supply push 4 protons. Complex 2, because of low energy, it do not push any protons, 0 protons. Complex 3 also pump 4 protons. The energy developed here is 10 calories. Because of this, it supplies 4 protons, and complex 4 also supplies 2 protons. Okay, 2 protons. So total 4, 8 and 10 protons. Total 10 protons will be in the intermembrane space. 10 protons will be there. So since there are 10 protons here in the intermembrane space, so proton gradient will be synthesized. Okay, due to that proton, the inner membrane will be negative. So protons will try to pump towards the inner membrane, but intermembrane space, inner membrane or inner mitochondrial membrane is impermeable to the protons. So the only way is ATP synthase complex or complex 6. We will study about this in the future slides. Okay, up to here I think it is clear. So how the electrons are flowing in the complex one, it is flowing from NADH to coenzyme. So the enzyme, that's why the complex is called NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase. Okay, so in the complex 2, electrons are flowing from succinate to coenzyme, so we call it as succinate dehydrogenase complex or succinate coenzyme Q reductase complex, right? So in the complex 3, the electrons are flowing from the coenzyme to cytochrome, so we call it as coenzyme Q cytochrome oxidoreductase complex. So it contains cytochrome B and C1, so electrons flow in this way. Okay, next we will talk about the complex 4, electrons flowing from the cytochrome C and cytochrome A3, so we call it as cytochrome C, and cytochrome C complex cytochrome C oxidase complex or cytochrome A3 complex, right? This is how we have to remember about the complex and the electron flow, right? Next slide. Sorry. Okay, right guys, so we already discussed so when the electrons are flowing, the energy will be developed. So what is that energy? In the complex one, it will develop 12 kilocalories. Due to that, it will pump 4 protons into the intermembrane space. Okay, what is that? It is supplying the electrons to the intermembrane space. Okay, how much? Complex 1 is supplying 4 protons, complex 2 it is supplying no protons because of the low energy, and complex 3 it is supplying 4 protons, and complex 4 it is supplying 2 protons. So where it is supplying? It is supplying intermembrane space. Okay, remember guys, this is intermembrane space, right? Because of this, what will happen? See in the next slide. So this is the thing happens since the protons are pumped. Since the protons are pumped in the intermembrane space, so proton gradient will be formed. The protons pumped into the intermembrane space, because the proton gradient, it has to come inside into the mitochondria, but unfortunately that inner membrane of the mitochondria, it's very impermeable for the protons. Okay, here complex 5 or ATP synthase will help to transfer the protons into the intermembrane. Okay, or inside the mitochondrial membrane. So as the protons are impermeable inside the mitochondria, so the proton gradient develops outside. So as the protons cannot pump towards the inner membrane, inside the membrane, so the protons will situated in the intermembrane space only. So because of this high number of protons, the protons gradients will be gradient developed. Okay, they're actually outside it is more positive, and inside it will be more negative. This proton gradient is responsible for the synthesis of ATP. Since more protons are synthesizing, or more protons are located in the outer membrane, it has to push inside. So the only way out is ATP synthesis, that is complex 5. Okay, so when as the protons cannot enter through the intermitochondrial membrane, the only way to enter is ATP synthesis at complex 5, which is present in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Okay, helped because of this, when these protons are passing through this ATP synthesis complex, we will synthesize the ATP. Okay, this is how it will be synthesized. We'll see in the next slide how it is synthesizing. Due to the proton gradient, the protons enter through the ATP synthesis, that leads to ATP synthesis. Okay, how? So now we will study about the complex 5. What is that? Actually, this is the ATP synthase complex. It contains what? FO subunit. O actually it is named after the inhibitor, that is oligomycin. Oligomycin is the inhibitor of complex 5. Okay, so It contains what? It contains F4 subunit. In the F4 subunit, it contains 10 C subunits, right? This 10 it contains 10 C subunit, which is attached with the F subunit, F1 subunit. Sorry, not F subunit. Okay, APAP synthase complex, it contains F4 subunit. Inside the F4 subunit, it contains 10 C subunits, 10 C subunits. To this 10 C subunits, F1 subunit is attached. To this F1 subunit, it contains gamma handle. To the F1 subunit, it contains in the F1 subunit, it contains the gamma handle. Okay, this is a handle. To this handle, it contains beta subunits and alpha gamma subunits also. Okay, this beta subunits will undergo conformation changes. What are those conformation changes? How it will, when the protons are flowing towards the ATP synthase complex, that is complex 5, it will flow through the F4 subunit. From the F4 subunit, it will flow through C subunits. From C subunits, it will go through the F1 subunit. So when it is going to the F1 subunit, it will go to the B subunit. When the protons are going to the B subunits, it will undergo undergo conformation changes. 3 conformation changes it will form. One is open conformation changes. It is responsible to release the ATP, and one more is loose conformation. So loose conformation, it is responsible to binding of ATP to ATP. Okay, this loose conformation will help to bind the phosphate group to the ADP, and it will form ATP. Then tight conformation help to synthesize the ATP finally. Okay, when the protons are flowing towards that each and every subunits in the complex 5, when if it go through the beta subunit, it will undergo 3 conformation: open, loose, and tight conformation. Open conformation will help to release ATP. Loose conformation helps to bind phosphate group to the ADP, and finally the tight conformation helps to synthesize the ATP. Okay, right, this is all about complex 5. Next we will see mechanism of electron transport chain reactions or chemoosmotic hypothesis. It's very, very important, and because of this actually ATP will be synthesized. We already know when the electrons are flowing towards the complexes, it will generate energy. For example, if you see the complex 1, it will generate 12 kilocalories. Okay, if you see the complex 2, it will generate 10 kilocalories, and same complex 4, it generate 10 kilocalories. When the energy is generating, okay, due to that energy, each and every complex push specific amount of protons. For example, complex 1 push 4 protons, complex 3 pushes 4 protons, complex 4 pushes 2 protons. So total 10 protons. Okay, total 10 protons will be pushed towards the into the intermembrane space. Okay, so due to that actually intermembrane space contains more protons, so it will generate a proton gradient. So 10 protons pumped into the intermembrane space. Due to this actually proton gradient develops outside. There was more protons, there will be more protons, and inside more negative because there will be no protons. Okay, because of this protons, because of this actually proton gradients, it is not protons, it is because of the proton gradients, the protons try to enter inside, but the inner mitochondrial membrane, it is impermeable to the proton entry. Only it can enter through the fifth complex. Okay, that is ACP synthase complex. Okay, which contains F4 subunit. The F4 subunit further contains 10 C subunit. To this C subunits of F4 subunit of the complex, gamma handle is attached. F1 subunit is attached. The F1 subunit contains gamma handle and 3 subunits, that is alpha, beta, gamma subunits. What is the advantage if it contains this? Okay, if you look here, okay, and again I am telling how the electricity is developed by water. There is hydroelectric mechanism, hydroelectricity. The water from high altitude will fall on the turbines. The turbines will move with high speed because of that. So because of that only then the electricity will be produced. So you see the protons will, if you feel the protons as a water, so when these protons are falling on the subunits like F4 subunit, okay, this when the protons are falling with high speed on the F4 subunit, it will try to rotate. When this will rotate, whatever the subunits attached to the F4 subunit, that is the C subunits, 10 C subunits will try to rotate with high speed. When these CO subunits will rotate, it will lead to rotate that's F1 subunit which is attached to the C subunit of the F4 subunit. Okay, it is sequence actually. So ultimately this F1 subunit